We're going to talk hurling next. We're going to get our predictions in, see exactly where the league is at. And Will O'Callaghan, it's looking particularly good for you.
Yeah, despite having an absolutely horrific weekend last weekend. But hey, Adrian, if you're right 52% of the time, you're wrong 48% of the time. And last weekend was pretty much a wipeout for all of us. But the only one saving grace, I think, for those of us who were neutrals in terms of the Gaelic football last weekend, we got the two magnificent stories with Tipperary beating Cork and Cavan overturning Donegal. I think it was around 80-1 if you back both of them going into the weekend. So that just goes to show how unlikely it was to happen. But I think it cost us all in terms of the prediction leaderboard going into this weekend.
Yeah, it didn't. The last weekend, the football really sort of done me over. Now, the only thing is we were almost all in the same boat, apart from Tommy, who'd tipped up Tipperary because he was just trying to create a point of difference. So fair play to him. Mm-hmm. He was brave, obviously, in that front. But the me going against the 3E in the hurling, well, who would have thunk it that, you know, the three experts, particularly yourself, a hurling man, let's face it.
Yeah, look, got both wrong. I still wonder. I mean, in a parallel universe, Barrett doesn't get sent off in the Galway versus Tipperary game, and maybe Tipperary hold on.
If Will, come on now.
Ifs and buts, but Tipperary were right in the game at that stage. But in fairness to Galway, like Galway finished that game very strongly, and they actually used the pitch very well when they got the extra man to be able to create some overloads. And you know, Adrian Toohey was able to get up and get into space to score that goal to give Galway the victory. And you would have to argue, I mean, obviously we're going to look at Galway against Limerick in a few minutes' time for Sunday afternoon, that Galway have done very little wrong in Championship so far this year, with the exception maybe of a 10 or 15 minute spell against Kilkenny in the Leinster final. So almost the draw sets itself up very nicely, as Paddy Stapleton was saying a few minutes ago on the show, for Galway to take on Limerick, and repeated the All-Ireland final of a couple of years ago. And maybe for the first time this year, Limerick might look vulnerable when they take on Galway. And then, you know, Waterford put in a huge performance to keep Tony Kelly to 2 points, notwithstanding the injury he picked up early on in the game. Would have to give Waterford a lot of hope that they can keep TJ Reid quiet. They were able to stop the hurler of the year for this year potentially. They're going to have to stop the hurler of the last decade, TJ Reid, if they're going to overcome Kilkenny on Saturday night.
You're talking like a man who is tipping Waterford, but you're not a man who's tipping Waterford. We did see the scores up there on screen. For anybody who's missed them, Will is leading the way, 2-game cushion over Adrian at the moment. He's got 29 correct calls, 9 incorrect calls since we started this, whether 4, 5, 6 weeks ago. Adrian had 27 correct calls, 11 incorrect. I'm second bottom, 26 and 12, and Tommy down there at the bottom, scraping the barrel, 25 and 13. We get our predictions up on screen now. We're all going for Kilkenny, except for Tommy, who's going for Waterford. But Will, you're sounding like a man who's doubting his decision.
Yeah, look, Waterford overturned Kilkenny back in 2017. Their championship record hasn't been hectic since, but under Liam Cahill, they've now put in back-to-back performances over the last couple of weekends, which were very impressive. You know, sticking with Limerick score for score in the Munster final, and then to be able to turn around 7 days later and put in such a huge performance as they did last weekend against Clare. Like, notwithstanding the fact that they were able to put the shackles onto that Clare defence, Waterford's running game operated perfectly. De Burca looks like he's back into top form again. Desi Hutchinson adds an extra goal-scoring threat in the team, took his goals very well last weekend. That's, you know, you got Stephen Bennett up there, who's a big scoring machine too, and he's going to punish Kilkenny if they give away frees. The thing is, I wonder what happens with who goes in to occupy De Burca is a big question for Kilkenny. Also, can Kilkenny produce, and this is why I'd back them to win, I think they can, produce a kind of a manic performance like they did in the semi-finals last year. They might actually welcome Waterford running the ball out, because I think they might try and turn them over as Waterford come out of defence. It's like they did to Limerick last year, where Limerick were playing a fairly short passing game that required a certain amount of running and shooting from range. Excuse me, Kilkenny's work rate was able to stop them and turn it around and create chances themselves. I actually kind of fancy Kilkenny from that point of view. But I realise that when you're backing Kilkenny this weekend, you're doing it on the evidence of a 40-minute spell or so against Dublin, and particularly the last 15 minutes or so against Galway. We have to see a Kilkenny performance that's able to maybe merge the two of them into a 67-minute performance if they're going to beat Waterford. Generally, Kilkenny have had Waterford's number. I don't know if that's much of an emotional scar on this Waterford team, given many of them would have beaten them in 2017. But I kind of just give an edge towards Kilkenny with the extra week's break as well to just about beat Waterford. But I think this is going to be one of the close games of the weekend. And if it's high scoring, you'd give Waterford every chance of qualifying.
Tommy, why do you disagree?
I think Will actually made my case for Waterford there, and I think he's going to end up regretting the fact that he's talked himself out of it. They looked really good last weekend against Clare, the Clare team that I backed, obviously. I don't know how much they did to get Tony Kelly out of the game. I think it was a streak of unfortunate events that led to him getting injured, Clare losing, me losing my pick. Desi Hutchinson looked unreal. And on top of that, Waterford have a Mead man playing in the half-forward line. Jack Fagan scored a goal last week. So how could I not back Waterford? Like, my county are being represented in the All-Ireland semi-final stage one last time. So, I don't know. Part of me feels that if Kilkenny get into the All-Ireland final, I'm going to be back Kilkenny. So I apologise to the people of Kilkenny for that. But I just think Waterford are going to have their number here. Will mentioned there might be a psychological factor, but Waterford have been better than or as good as Kilkenny in the last 3 semi-finals. I think there's been a draw and a win each on 2 of them there. So I don't think there'll be any psychological factors. I'm back in Waterford. I reckon that Desi Hutchinson's going to score another goal.
So you're going for Kilkenny Limerick final. Give us your thinking on your picks this week.
I think, first of all, that Will should be allowed to change his mind. He's talked himself into Waterford, and I'm offering forward the motion that Will be allowed to change his mind.
That can't happen, lads.
Yeah.
Come on. There's six.
No, he's entitled to change his mind if he so wishes. Will?
No, I think. Look, I'm happy to stick with Kilkenny, and probably will end up being wrong at around 8 o'clock tomorrow night. But you back Kilkenny on a Thursday when we submit these. We stick with Kilkenny.
I'm going for Waterford. I'm going for Kilkenny at the best. Tommy's talking about Waterford look good against Clare, and I made the case last week when I got both my predictions right that Clare were not as good as they were being talked up. And Tommy himself has talked himself out of this one because he said that Waterford didn't necessarily mark Tony Kelly out of it, that he obviously picked up a couple of injuries, and that's what done for him. And I'd probably agree with that, and that's why I'm. To be fair, Paddy was talking me around slightly the other direction earlier, but I'm going to stick with Kilkenny on the basis that the old dog for the hard goal.
So you got lucky with Tony Kelly's injury, just to be clear.
No, there was nothing. Like, you look at the prediction's the prediction. On life is life, as we've learned this week. And then on the other side, I've asked Paddy Stapleton what are the weaknesses of Limerick, and he can't come up with any. And I've gone with Galway 2 weeks ago. They were beaten, and I doubled down on them last week. And I'm now happy to jump ship and get on board with the greatest team in the modern era of hurling, and it'll be Limerick all the way from here.
Tommy, why is that not going to be the case? Is there any Meath men playing for Galway?
There isn't, Eoin, but I was really impressed with their ruthlessness last week. I thought Tipperary would take them, but Galway looked like they were playing at a slightly different level than I would have expected. They were physical across the fields. They took the goal with Aidan Hart. Joe Canning looked in ridiculous form. To be honest, what I'm backing here is I'm backing the back-to-back performances over the potential freshness that Limerick may have. I think that'll hamper Limerick this weekend, that they've been waiting to play games for the last couple of weeks. And I just think that Galway are going to overpower them. To be honest, lads, these games are going to be epics. They're going to be so close. So, whoever comes out the winners at the end of it, I need a freak weekend in ways to catch up on the table. But I'm backing Galway to get the job done.
So you don't actually believe in Galway?
I actually haven't a clue, to be honest.
I was going to ask you to talk some sense into Tommy there, Will, but it seems like he's already done it. Why are Limerick going to do this at the weekend, in your opinion?
Yeah, look, I mean, it comes down really to the fact that the only blot in the Limerick copybook over the last couple of seasons has been that performance in the first half in the semi-final last year against Kilkenny. And I would imagine that for Kiley, that is the exact game plan and the motivation that you would give your players before you go in, which is don't leave the first half behind you this time around. I think Limerick are going to be immensely focused. They're tired. They're obviously not as tired as Galway will have been, with Galway having played the last couple of weeks. They're a bit rested coming into this. Limerick are the team in the championship with the pedigree, really. You look at, if things were to go wrong, even on their bench, they've got so many match winners that they can bring into the game. I think even if Galway were to get a run on them, I'd fancy Limerick to get back into it. Obviously, the All-Ireland final a couple of years ago was decided by just a puck of a ball, and even if Joe Canning had landed that late free, we could have been heading towards a replay. That's how close things have been between these teams over the last couple of years. So for the neutral, this is a wonderful matchup to get, because Galway are probably well matched to take on Limerick. And as I mentioned at the outset, Galway have been pretty impressive in championship so far this year. Their only concern would be maybe their defence at different times. Tipperary got in behind for a couple of goals in the first half last week from direct ball going in. Similarly, we saw Kilkenny when they were able to go a little bit longer and get ball in towards Colin Fennelly, and then Richie Hogan when he came on. They paid a bit of dividend against Galway in that one. That's something obviously Galway have to watch out for, because Aaron Gillette will be looking to try and stretch space in the Galway full back line, the Limerick full forward line. And I actually think Gillette is going to get a bit of space for Limerick this weekend. I think they'll pick off enough scores to beat Galway. But as Tommy said, I wouldn't be surprised if this was a score either way going into the last couple of minutes of the game.
Right, good stuff. That's a good note to end it on. Adrian, that is your quick picks for this week.
Yeah, hopefully I'll manage to nudge myself further. But I mean, Will is going to take a 2-point lead with 3 games to go anyway, so it's probably done and dusted at this point.